MLS playoffs kick off tonight. Barca's game in Miami has been canceled, and we speculate on college soccer's new era and new top tier. That and more on Wednesday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround. We cover the world's game being played right across from coast to coast in the United States of America. My name is Robert Kerr, local soccer guy, and to my side, radio soccer guy, Jason Davis. And before I say how you feeling, welcome to all our new subscribers. We've had a nice little bump in subscriptions this week. Welcome aboard. Now, how you feeling, Mr. Davis?
I'm good. It's an eventful day, and I'm glad we're going to get to talk to an old friend of mine, Travis Clark, who knows probably more about college soccer than anybody I know. So after this U.S. soccer plan got dropped, who better to dive into it with than Travis Clark, who works for Top Drawer Soccer and has for, I think, like 15 years. Travis Clark's been around doing this for a while, and like there's other stuff, and we're going to get to that new member goal, right? We're going to get 5 new members, new MK Ultras, access to the Discord, access to the bonus stuff, preferential treatment when it comes to comments. We're working on new things as well. And behind the scenes, you want to know what we're cooking up? And there's some really interesting stuff that is cooking behind the scenes. Become an MK Ultra.
And good morning to you, subscriber and member, PSU to DCU. And I also want to shout out to all of our most recent MK Ultras: Kate Phillips, Matthew Brothers, David Cotton, Corey Brandon, Edward Lewis, Christian Kahoo, and Kai Velmer. Thank you aboard. Looking forward to chatting with you in the Morning Kickaround Discord server. Shout out to all the subscribers tuning in for free as well. And can't wait to get into today's show. You ready to do it?
Let's go.
All right, let's kick long balls here on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Major League Soccer's playoff calendar kicks off tonight. The wild card round of the 2025 Major League Soccer playoffs kick off tonight. Chicago versus Orlando and Portland versus RSL to start us all off.
Yeah, here's the bracket. I know we talked about this when it was confirmed after decision day on Monday, but now we know when these games are happening. We'll get to the actual schedule in a second because this is Major League Soccer, Rob. So you can't just talk about, wow, I can't wait to see that team play that team, and that's going to be quite a battle. And who's going to make it through to the finals? You got to talk about when the games are happening, how the schedule works, the format. Is best of 3 the right way to go when we get to those second round matchups? I mean, it is just it's always that with Major League Soccer. Now I'm going to enjoy this. I like the MLS Cup playoffs. This is the most wonderful time of the year that takes 2.5 months to complete. I am thrilled that the MLS Cup playoffs are here, but there are those things. Okay, here's the schedule for the next couple days up through the end of the week. Tonight, as you said, Chicago, Orlando, taking place at SeatGeek Stadium. I think we've established, I think it was producer Jenny who actually dropped this knowledge on Monday that we didn't mention on the air, that there's something in the contract that the Fire have with the Chicago Bears, or obviously the main tenants of Soldier Field, that doesn't allow them to play a certain number of days after the Bears are there or something. There's some requirement.
I think it's within 4 days of a game at Soldier Field.
So there you go. So that stinks. I mean, can we just say how stinky that is? And I know Chicago's working on building their stadium. I don't know if there are shovels in the ground or we're even close to imagining what that place will look like. We have shown you the renderings. They are beautiful. They are stunning renderings there in Chicago. But right now they have to do this weird bouncing between different stadiums. So they'll play that game at SeatGeek. Portland and Salt Lake at Providence Park. That one's a wild one. That could go either way. I don't know that you can pick a winner there. So then we get a game on Friday, Miami and Nashville, first match of their best of 3 series. Great, grand, Chase Stadium, Fort Lauderdale, Inter Miami, Lionel Messi, 29 goals, all the stuff. Sam Surridge, who had a great season as well. and these teams just played recently, and then we don't have a game on Saturday. We just don't have a game on Saturday. We just skip over Saturday. Why are we skipping over Saturday, Rob? I don't know the answer to that. Do you know the answer to that?
I think we speculated that it could be to avoid conflict with the college football schedule. I mean, Saturdays are chocked full for like 13 hours with a college football, but the alternative on Sunday, NFL football is no less popular than the college game.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on there. As you can see on Sunday, we don't know who Philadelphia will play as the top seed in the East, and obviously the Supporter Shield winners. They'll get the winner of that matchup between Chicago and Orlando, and then San Diego on Sunday in the nightcap will get the winner of Portland and Real Salt Lake. Vancouver, Dallas. We just saw Dallas go to Vancouver and save their season with the result up there. So that there's some interesting things here. And the other part is, and we're just beginning this, Rob. So I don't want to get. This is maybe for down the road, but the other part of the MLS Cup playoff format and schedule is because they added those extra games via the best of 3 series, which we all speculated was a matter of inventory for Apple TV, Major League Soccer's television partner. We now have, and this has actually been true for a long time, even without this, we have this gap. Like we got a big gap in the playoffs because of the international window. So we'll play games all the way through. Monday, November 3rd is Seattle against Minnesota, and then we take a giant break, right? Like because of the international and as I said, the reason it takes 2.5 months to do this or something thereabouts, because the final is on December 7th. I think is the final of the MLS season, and it's October 22nd. Like between now and then, I'm going to have
to parse the details. December 5th.
December 5th. My apologies. But regardless, I'm gonna have my Christmas decorations up. I'm gonna have winterized my home by then. I haven't done that yet. Whatever that is. Like it just stinks. It just stinks. And I would prefer one-off games because I do think that ratchets up the drama of it. We'll see if this MLS Cup playoff season delivers. It is worth noting that MLS and Apple have decided to eliminate the MLS Season Pass paywall for Apple TV subscribers. So if you have an Apple TV subscription, you will have access to the MLS Cup playoffs, regardless of if you paid for MLS Season Pass. Now, I don't have an Apple TV subscription, but I did pay for MLS Season Pass. So I'm good to go that way. But this is obviously a bid on the part of Apple and MLS to expand the reach of the playoffs, with notably the greatest player of all time participating in the East.
To build off your point at the top, when you're saying that you can't just go into this saying, I can't wait for the playoffs, you kind of have to parse through what the format is. And part of that is a little bit disappointing because we don't have baked in traditions. Like I know traditions is talking about hopping around the November window for the internationals and whatnot, because this format is only the second year of this format. And with the international calendar changing next year, this format won't be the same next year because the October and November windows are combining. So I'm not sure where that will, does that poop in the pool for this sort of playoff plan? But that's something to keep in mind, because the baking in a tradition or routines, annual routines, like I know in football, people have like the game before Thanksgiving is I get to go with our family. We go to a game or this or that. Any sort of baked in traditions are going to get kind of flown out the window or have never really had the time to percolate and to form those together. I remember being you were talking about Christmas and the MLS Cup final. I remember literally being at a downtown cute Christmas craft fair and peeking through the window of a bar to watch the MLS Cup final while the family was doing the pictures with Santa out in the snowy street. So I don't know if those two things jive. Maybe that's the tradition we bake in, but moving forward, there's no cohesiveness.
Here's the problem, Rob. You're speaking to a lack of tradition that's been an effect of Major League Soccer constantly change. No, I do think in the general sense, Major League Soccer has been wise in its 30 plus years now to be adaptable, to be able to pivot on a moment's notice when it feels like they need to do something different. I don't think you could have picked a path way back in 1996 and said, we're going to be on this path until the end of time and we're never going to change anything. I don't think you could have done that. Now, the problem obviously is when you allow for those changes that you might need to make because strategically it's better for your burgeoning league in a country where soccer is not the number one sport, you then create a scenario, an environment where you can make too many changes, where it becomes very easy to fall into a trap of, well, we got to change it. It's not working perfectly. Oh, let's do this. Let's do that. Oh, we had that playoff format last year. Well, whatever. It didn't work. Let's change it again. And as you said, the knock-on effect there is that you do not establish patterns, rhythms, and traditions for sports fans who are inclined to those things. And I will throw this bomb into the middle of the room. We expect Major League Soccer to change its calendar, Rob, to flip their calendar over. Now, ultimately, that may be better in the long term, right? It's better for the business of transferring players, or it's better because the playoff season is out from the shadow of American football, which looms so large. We're talking about maybe not playing Saturday games the first week of the playoff season because there's so much college football on to compete with, and that just doesn't make sense. If you are in May, June, or whatever, you don't have to deal with this, but that will create another problem of forcing people to change their rhythms and their patterns and their habits. And I don't know, is that something that's going to go over with an American soccer population that have chosen to dive into MLS despite all its flaws? Are you suddenly pulling the rug out from underneath them?
We shall see how this all plays out, but MLS Cup for 2025 edition, wildcard games start tonight. Chicago versus Orlando, Portland versus RSL. Moving on to our second long ball of the day. News came out in New York. A 48-team World Cup bid was submitted by U.S., Mexico, Costa Rica, and Jamaica. Only bid so far for the 2031 edition.
Yeah, I want to share the logo if I could for this real quick. I put up, let's put it back up there. Thank you to Jenny for fixing that for me. Here's the logo for this thing that is on the U.S. Soccer website. Now, we should talk about the details. What's more important here is how they intend to organize this. You are throwing in Costa Rica and Jamaica, which I think is nice. And if we're talking about a 48-team World Cup, there's no reason not to expand out. I do think that we are we are diluting the impact of individual World Cups when it comes to sort of how the culture of the place where it takes place impacts our feelings about it. We're not going to have any of those anymore. We're not going to have a World Cup that is España 82 or Brazil 2014, and it is
Italia 90.
Italia 90, where the music and the images and the architecture and the all of that is part of the story of the World Cup. That is out the window. That is gone. FIFA has killed that dead. But if you're going to do a big World Cup, and I don't know, 48 teams for a women's World Cup, if you're going to do a big World Cup, yeah, share the wealth. But the other thing is this logo. No, I don't actually, it says 31. I believe that. So that's 2031, right? That's the year the World Cup is supposed to take place. That's what they're bidding for. Why is it gold, Rob? Why is it gold?
I know that there's one looming suggestion in the political environment that might lend itself to why that might be gold, but we don't have to dip in there. But a lot of comments coming in from viewers and members.
We can be upfront about that. I don't think there's any doubt that the predilections of the current holder of the head office of the United States of America, the presidential office of the United States of America, I don't think there's any doubt that his liking of gold is the reason why gold is proliferating again. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think that a lot of people are playing to his particular likes. I don't see how there's any other way of looking at it, Rob. But okay, that's neither here nor there. We can move on.
Yeah, you're talking about the 48 teams. Is that too much, too little? Wow. Where's the balance of bringing new teams and new regions of the world into the fold? And where do you balance that with like high quality of play? A lot of folks really like the previous versions of the men's Euros because it was a small group. All of the teams pretty much, except for maybe like one at the bottom, are all high grade, excellent elite teams. And then even in the women's game, it went from 32 to 48. And, the drop off after the first dozen or 24 teams is pretty significant. Does that drive federations across the world to put more resources in, more effort to increase those standards across the world? I mean,
I don't know. I look, the one side of that coin is you incentivize nations to be more aggressive in helping their women's programs along. And let's be honest, lots of federations need a swift kick in the rear end to care about their women's teams. And so on that side, it's a good thing that you're sort of saying, hey, it's much easier to get into a World Cup than it used to be. You can reach the pinnacle of this. You can play on the world's biggest stage, put a little bit more money in and see what happens. On the other side of it, obviously, is that you risk diluting the power of that tournament. The quality of the tournament goes down. You're also locking out anything but multi-nation bids and potentially locking out any bids that aren't nations like the United States that have multiple stadium options should they want to hold this thing. I made the argument years and years and years ago, before we even got to this moment, that FIFA had created a scenario where only countries run by dictatorial regimes or authoritarian governments were going to be able to host the World Cup, because what FIFA requires is often such a big problem in terms of the popular sentiment around it that it's a hard sell. And then obviously you kind of need the ability of somebody to say, well, we're just going to do this and here's why. And so FIFA has created that scenario, and obviously Gianni Infantino's absolutely fine just commiserating and hanging out with authoritarian regimes. That's his jam. Like he's going so far as to support people for Nobel Prizes and things like that. Man, it is a double-edged sword that I don't know is being done for the right reasons. I think it's impossible to imagine that. Like the cynical mind goes straight to FIFA is doing this, or this is happening not to benefit the women's game, but to benefit FIFA.
Yeah, you have to really squint hard at the news to think that this was an altruistic decision. But for the record, this is the only bid for the 2031 edition as it stands. Voting for confirmation of this is in May. And for the record, Brazil is hosting the next edition, which happens in 2027. I do think that it's cool. It would be great to see a Caribbean team host some games. So I am glad that Jamaica and Costa Rica are getting involved in this.
Yeah,
I always think that the Central American teams and nations and Caribbean nations always kind of feel like afterthoughts when it comes to CONCACAF and larger things.
And okay, we can also rewind to the Qatari World Cup on the men's side, right? And the debate over whether that should have happened. And obviously there is at least some reasonable belief that people's palms were greased in order to make that happen, right? Or at least, even if it wasn't sort of surreptitious payments to get people to vote for Qatar, there was this, well, Qatar's got all this money and they're going to throw some your way and you're going to get all these junkets and all that stuff. And obviously that's the way the world works politically often. But there's sort of the argument for a Qatari World Cup is it fair for FIFA to lock out smaller countries? Now, I said that because of the size of these things, you kind of need these giant countries or these authoritarian regimes or whatever just to kind of grease the skids to make that happen. But you could also argue that by creating an environment where multiple countries can host, because you have so many games, then you are opening the door to places like Costa Rica or Jamaica, when otherwise Jamaica's never going to get the World Cup to itself. That's never going to happen. Jamaica doesn't have the resources. They don't have the stadiums. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the hotels. They don't have the airports, right? So even in a 32-team environment, which I think is what a lot of people imagine is the World Cup at its best, is a 32-team tournament. I mean, again, that's probably just being normalized to what that's been for the last 30 years. But that even in a 32-team environment, Jamaica's not getting the World Cup. Costa Rica's not getting the World Cup. Qatar's not getting the World Cup normally, unless you kind of say, well, here's an opportunity for you to go and spend your way to that, right? Like, is it, and the Qatari World Cup is a good example of FIFA bending over backwards to make something happen by moving that tournament from summer to winter. And we're looking at that happening again with the Saudi Arabia World Cup coming, right? We talked about this. So is it better for FIFA to have this sort of, okay, we're willing, as the MLS is doing with its playoff format, we're willing to change tradition and do things differently in order to give access to this tournament to countries who would not otherwise normally get access to it? Is that worth what we're seeing with the expansion of it, or what some people might view as exploitation in some cases?
Before we get to our final long ball of the show today, we have a great guest coming on at the top of the hour to talk about the proposed new era of college soccer. And we're also going to talk about a stadium plan back from the dead in the Midwest. Thank you to all our new subscribers tuning in for free. Thank you to our new members to the show. And if we get 5 during this live show, we will do a bonus segment at the end of the show today. All right, long ball number 3, La Liga calling off plans to hold the regular season game between Barcelona and Villarreal. I see you shaking your head. It was relevant canceling this, wasn't it?
Yes, and I said this before the show, Rob. I said I want to be clear about this because I think it does matter. It is being headlined in places like here at ESPN. La Liga cancels Barcelona Villarreal game in Miami. There's 2 things wrong, I think, with that headline. Number one, it puts Barcelona first when Villarreal is the team that would be the home team if this game did happen. So it should be Villarreal Barcelona, not the other way around, because as soccer fans, we always read it as the home team is listed first.
Yep.
And number 2, it's not La Liga that has canceled this. At least it's not La Liga that wants to cancel this or has made the choice that led to the cancellation. It is Relevant Sport, the promoters of the game, who have decided that they can't do it. And then La Liga has had to say, okay, well, I guess we're not doing it then because our promoter has pulled out. And this is related to just uncertainty around this, because it's October 22nd. This game was slated for December 20th. That's 2 months for them to get all this together after only just being cleared by UEFA and all of the relevant bodies organizing the game worldwide, or certainly in Europe, that they could do this. The go-ahead from that level only just happened. So in order for this to get done in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium, where they would hope to have a sellout, they have a lot of work to do. And ultimately, because the players just executed a protest on Friday, was it Real Oviedo and Espanyol? The players stood still for the first 20 seconds of the match, and La Liga required broadcasters not to show it. So the whistle blew, the game started, the players didn't move, and La Liga told their broadcasters show something else, and there was shots of the stadium from the outside. That this is obviously a protest that kind of went across the league, but this is high profile stuff that La Liga is saying, don't show the players protest. I mean, again, we are now very much in this narrative of there's a struggle between the powers that be that want it to happen and certain relevant bodies that don't. And the players, I think, are making a statement. And if Relevant's not doing this, they're not canceling this because they understand this is the wrong thing to do, or because, the game should stay in Spain. This is unfair to Villarreal fans. This is not the spirit of the sport that we are custodian. No, this is a business decision. Relevant looks at this and goes, we're going to get screwed. We're going to get left holding the bag if it doesn't happen. If the players protest and don't get on the plane, or something else kind of big happens that could slow down this game, we don't want to be the ones who will get the black eye because it didn't happen.
The release from Relevant goes such as this. We have informed La Liga of the need to postpone the planned match between Villarreal and Barcelona in Miami, December 20th. Given the current uncertainty in Spain, there is insufficient time to properly execute an event of this scale. It would be irresponsible to begin selling tickets without a confirmed match in place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, this is basically down to the business part of it. And La Liga is clearly aggrieved over all of this. Right? The La Liga statement, Rob, I don't know how you have it in front of you.
Yeah, I do. Following discussions with the promoter of the match in Miami, the latter has announced its decision to cancel the organization of the event due to uncertainty generated in Spain in recent weeks. La Liga deeply regrets this project, which represented a historic and unparalleled opportunity of the internationalization of Spanish football, cannot go ahead.
Right. So again, La Liga is saying you guys are screwing this up for us. Like, thanks a lot, guys. We were going to do this awesome thing, and now we can't because of you. It seems it's very childish the way that this is framed for me from La Liga about the part about the unparalleled opportunity for the internationalization of Spanish football. Well, they're
Like, we
saying
were trying to break the bank open, guys. Come on.
they're passing the buck to, I guess in this case, relevant, but obviously the uncertainty in Spain is down to the players and other things. They're passing the buck and saying, if we can't keep up economically with other leagues, obviously in Europe, this is on you. This is your fault. We're trying over here to figure out a way to make La Liga relevant around the world. No pun intended. We're trying to do something here that we think is necessary because this is the way the game is moving. And I definitely think that there's a difficult conversation to be had that nobody wants to really do. Nobody wants to engage in this idea of, well, La Liga is about to become less relevant in Europe, or La Liga is about to fall behind some of the bigger leagues on the continent, or the richer leagues, or fall further behind the Premier League, because everybody sees the Premier League as the leader here because they have done the work of internationalizing their product without taking games abroad. They are making money hand over fist. La Liga is chasing that dragon, and they're saying, if we don't do this, there's no way for us to keep up. Now, again, the question is there some other way to do it? Should you do everything you can up to this in order to get yourself back into a conversation as being able to compete economically against the Premier League and the likes of the Premier League? Right? Because is this selling the soul of your league, of your sport, of Spanish football? Are you sacrificing something on the altar of business that you shouldn't be sacrificing? That is the big question. That is the overarching question of our football times right now, Rob.
It's the Pandora's box, really. You don't know where it's going to go if this goes ahead. And it should be noted that the Italian game, the Serie A game, planned to go ahead between AC Milan and Como in Australia in February. No word on that being canceled. But to add to the kind of maybe immature nature of these statements coming out, Barcelona, who has definitely had a turn of face when it comes to altruism in the last 20 so years. They also say they deeply regret it, and they regret the missed opportunity to expand the image of the competition to a strategic market with the capacity for growth and generation of resources for the benefit of everyone. And that's, like I said, probably until about 2010 or so, I held Barcelona very high regard, pinnacle of the sport, didn't have shirt sponsors. Like, they definitely
Més que un club. Més que un club. Is that right? You were on board with that idea. More than a club, Rob.
Yeah, and I'd say because of their mismanagement and hunger to keep up, they've really turned into the opposite of that. And this kind of reeks of desperation that they need to get themselves out of their financial peril. And they've shown it with all their different sponsorships and all the various different levers they've pulled.
Yeah,
they're willing to sell those things on the altar.
Spotify Camp Nou is one thing, isn't it? Which they can't even play in yet, or they haven't been able to get back into. I want to address this from PSU to DCU. Won't U.S. Soccer say no to this game? They cannot. They will not, because they entered into they found a way to settle, rather, with Relevant Sport, who was suing U.S. Soccer over preventing things like this happening. And again, in this country, because of our laws around restraint of trade and those trust elements, you basically can't say no. U.S. Soccer basically can't say no lest they want to be in court over it, and that's where we are.
Yeah, that's where it is. And sorry, Nate, not trying to pile on Barcelona, but it is what it is.
It's been a wild couple of years, Nate. Let's just say that.
Yeah, thanks for all your comments and tuning in. Thank you to all our new subscribers. It is free to subscribe, and if you'd like to support the show just a little bit more, become an MK Ultra. $3.99 a month gets you into the membership club, and you get early access to videos, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server. You can also support the show outside of that on coffee.com/morningkickaround, and follow us on all of our social media channels, where we have been putting out some content on there as well. All right, we've reached the top of the show, and our guest is waiting in the wings. So we're going to come back and talk the recommended new era of college soccer here on Morning Kickaround. Welcome in. Big question here on Morning Kickaround. Which college programs will be placed into the proposed new top tier of the college soccer world? To dig into this and more, we are joined by Top Drawer Soccer's Director of Content, Travis Clark. Welcome aboard on Morning Kickaround, sir.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Happy to give you all the answers. There's not a lot of questions surrounding this at all.
No, yeah, it's all very clear, Travis. Thank you for coming by. Just a shout out. It's been a long time since I've seen Travis. Good to talk to him because we go back. We covered youth soccer together, Travis and I did once upon a millennia ago.
To an MLS draft together as well.
We did that,
many moons ago, so.
We did do that. Yeah. We've spent some time together, Travis and I. So we've seen it all. We're completely open-minded and positive about every direction U.S. soccer is taking in 21st century, is what I think we want to say. Now, obviously, Travis, the big news is that the white paper from U.S. Soccer on proposed changes to college soccer came out. There's a lot to kind of dig into there. I think before we talk about like who would be in the top level of these leagues and what you make of some of the proposed changes, I wonder if you have a sense of what kind of appetite there is on the NCAA side to consider what U.S. soccer has laid down.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a question. I think first and foremost, for listeners who are unaware, it's worth going to ussoccer.com/college soccer to check out the whole white paper, because there's so much in there that it's impossible to really cover it in this brief chat we're going to have about it. So that's always my question for me. The landscape of college sports is changing, has changed, is going to keep changing. So if this is something that the NCAA is going to move forward with, I think that the one thing that I think it's worth passing along is I've had some college coaches tell me that the college angle here is to propose this league as kind of a breakaway from an NCAA's control, and then they can pitch that to the richer schools and say, hey, we did this with soccer, let's do it with football, let's do it with basketball. And that is sort of the pathway forward where it could become a reality. I'm still skeptical that it will happen. People are talking about how this would save colleges money, and that's a great thing. I'm all for a more regionalized competition. I'm texting with college coaches. They're flying from the East Coast back to the West Coast because they're in the Big Ten, and it's just like, their players are getting up at 5 a.m., flying across the country, and then going to class. So it's sort of like, what are we really doing here, guys, with all of this? So I think from that aspect, it's good. Whether or not it can happen, there's just so many questions about it, from facilities to support staff. How do you do it if you do it in men's D1 soccer and not women's D1 soccer, where there's way more moving parts and more programs? So again, as I noted at the top, it's like there are just so many questions around, even if it's interesting to see U.S. soccer move forward with that.
I want to for visual purposes for those people watching here on YouTube. I want to bring up this is the regionalization idea in visual form as included in the U.S. Soccer white paper. And as Travis said, go read it for yourself at ussoccer.com/college soccer. So the basic idea here is regional divisions and local divisions. This is based on the quality, the competitive level of the teams, Travis. So when you look at this and what you see here, does this make sense?
It makes sense from the geographics of it. It makes a bit more sense if you are able to cluster schools that can be competitive with each other. Now, how you divide it out, it's going to be, we don't have a history of politics in anything. So it's like, it'll be political. Some coaches will be lobbying, hey, we should be in this division. There's talk, I don't know if it made it into the white paper, but there's talk of like promotion relegation within these divisions. So there's a lot of things that you're looking at. But I think the whole idea behind this map is if you're decreasing travel time and making things simpler for some schools, the idea behind it, that certainly has a lot of positivity. But then it's like, how do you slice that up? So let's pick a couple of schools from outside of Power Conference that have done a good job in the men's D1 game. You have High Point University, you have UNC Greensboro. There's a ton of North Carolina schools. Dude, schools like that, how do you tell them no when they're getting results? They've beaten North Carolina in the NCAA tournament. UNCG just tied North Carolina State the other night, who's having a great season, doing very well. That's like a Power 4 ACC program. So, that's kind of a microcosm of the conversation that they would have to have when you're looking at slicing this up. So where do you put those schools and that kind of a thing? I think High Point beat Georgetown, but Georgetown's not a Power 4, right? But they're doing great in the Big East, right? If you're talking by the traditional, maybe I'm wrong about the Big East. I can't lose track of what's Power 4 and Power 5 and all that. I only look at it through a soccer complex,
it'll
soccer
change
lens.
tomorrow. Yeah, it'll change tomorrow.
Exactly. So that's the whole part of the conversation that is kind of difficult to suss out at this point.
Yeah, it seems very difficult, and that's a big part of the reason why we wanted to have you on here with a little expertise of how this possibly could be broken down. But you said obviously it'll be difficult to parse who would be in the elite tiers and who would be lower. And up until this point, NCAA has been pretty, stubborn and they've resisted change over the years. It seems like from the outside perspective. So what's the likelihood that, they'll engage with this other than, just throwing it out the window as soon as they read it?
Yeah, I mean, that I think is probably why the Federation went forward with it, because they see it as an opportunity to at least, table a series of recommendations. Whereas from an NCAA, if it's an NCAA driven thing, I don't even know if they would try to find the budget line item to spend the money to even compile a study like that. So right. if you go through the list of people involved, it's an interesting it runs the gamut from, the president of the University of Maryland, who's Daryl Pines. His son Donovan Pines played soccer at Maryland, was a DC United player, I believe. He's playing in Europe at some point. So someone like that. You have Richard Motzkin from Wasserman, an agent, and then you have a couple of athletic directors. So I think the idea behind it is to, put the financial backing to at least table a proposition. But then I don't know how it comes together, because, when you're talking about men's soccer, you don't have the SEC money that could help drive something like this, right? How do you determine if this is actually going to save money, which again, that is what this proposal tables. But then many college coaches that I speak with are like, I'm pretty skeptical that would actually save money. And then, there's a flip side to it, right? While we think about this as a development chance, college soccer, it's about winning games, right? That's what, at the end of the day, a lot of these programs are trying to do. Coaches who don't win enough games, they lose their jobs. So, you get rid of a less competitive spring season, which I do have. And then and that's another thing college coaches note. It's that's when we develop some of our players, because that's when, you can play a reserve team in MLS if you follow the right you can vary your competition. It's a little more regional, but you're also bringing in D2, D3, and AIA schools to give some of your bench players a run that they don't get in the fall. So, there's all kinds of questions about that as well.
Yeah, I know. Look, the natural American soccer fan inclination is to go and look at anything that resembles pro rel and go, let's talk about that. And that's kind of what this is. But there's also the season change on the table. And it's interesting you mentioned the money factor here, Travis, because what I read in the white paper from US Soccer is, hey, we're going to use some of our resources to actually help bring more money into the college game. Now, there's also, obviously there's been people talking about that college teams should just split off from their colleges in terms of official connection and be their own individual clubs. How that would work money wise, I don't know. But I do appreciate US Soccer trying to do something here. I do appreciate an attempt on their behalf, or their part rather, because there is this very clear idea that college soccer is not being maximized as part of the wider American soccer push forward, whatever that is. It's historically important. It's obviously developed a ton of players. There are schools that have rich histories, but it still feels like it's so disconnected from everything else that's happening, particularly with the rise of professional academies.
Yeah, and I do think that there's value to it. College coaches acknowledge in my conversations with them that they can't just stand pat, because the future of athletics, which is so revenue driven, NIL, compensation for athletes, it's they know they need to be innovative and not just sort of rely on what was previously done. I think the what was proposed by U.S. Soccer too is like they would host a spring college cup, because part of the big reason for the push for the the school year long season, I guess is the best way to put it, is you could move the final into the spring when it would maybe be a little more conducive to attention. But how much is that really going to move the needle, right? Like, will people care a lot more? There's a lot of the college coaches will try out the model of like, oh, lacrosse has their Final Four in what is it, May? I think Memorial Day weekend. Creating a tentpole event like that, I think that could be a good thing. But is it worth trying to sort of like thread the needle and like weave through all these things that you can attain to really shift what at the end of the day, they are students, and you got to kind of make the pathway. Am I going to be a pro, or am I going to be a student athlete and go the college route and go that way, acknowledging that it may not maximize my development. So, and then there's the whole international player question, right? In the white paper, it's like 35% of men's Division I soccer are internationals. A lot of the cases for these international guys, right? They come over to the U.S. when they're 20, 21 as freshmen. So, maybe there's a way forward where you don't implement these changes, but players who are 15 and 16 years old who sign with an MLS team, maybe they should have that same opportunity afforded them. That a lot of these players, there's guys I'm seeing who are 25 years old playing. Oh, this player is so good. Well, he's 25. He's playing against 18 and 19-year-olds. He should be really good.
Well, let me address that, Travis, because you're bringing it up. I put on screen some of the. This is obviously clipped from Henry Bushnell's write-up of the story at The Athletic, so you can read, his kind of parsing of this if you don't want to read the entire paper. But these eligibility rule things are in there, and they stood out to me. Well, beyond this, which we'll get to, there's also this idea of capping college participation at 23. Now, maybe that doesn't eliminate all those international players who have professional club experience, or at least come through academies, landing in America and not taking spots. It gets really weird in the framing of it, but certainly there are a lot of people who would suggest that college soccer is too heavily invested in international players. Do you see that as a net positive, the cap on age at the college level?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's one way to go about it, because you don't want to push international players out of the game altogether here, because there's a lot of value in what they bring, both from the sort of like student life perspective. You're talking about bringing in players from different backgrounds that will be good for just people within your university, in my opinion, right? You get to know players from all across the world that may not come across, look at Marshall University, right? There's not a lot of Europeans making the trip there, but with the men's soccer program the way it is, that is certainly an interesting angle. On the flip side of it, if you cap the age, that sort of players have to make that decision. Okay, am I 19 years old? Am I getting the offers that I want, or do I look at this opportunities abroad? And but you have on the other side, I'm talking myself around in circles. Like, you have state-funded universities bringing in lots of international athletes, but aren't these state universities also bringing in just high-quality international students because they need them too? So, it's again, like that's why this is far from a straightforward conversation. So I think instituting some kind of guidelines where you loosen eligibility for the U.S. player, cap the age to some extent, you can, but who knows? Maybe you'll just get sued, right? Like somebody will just take you to court over it. So,
well, okay, but that's the thing. Like, again, where the NCAA is on all of this, whether they can do something like cap age, I think is certainly a question. One thing that I know Rob wanted to kind of speculate about which teams would end up in those top regional divisions. Travis, do you have a sense of that? Like, if you were forced to make a list, and I know you would probably not want to offend anybody. You mentioned High Point, you mentioned Greensboro. Like, that's obviously a problem. How would you even do this? U.S. Soccer says something. It's actually in this copy here about objective criteria in year one. I don't know what that is. What is objective criteria? What objective criteria are we using?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at historical semi-recent success, maybe going back 3 to 5 years, and you'd have to pull teams that particularly perform well. But when you're also looking at the criteria, are you then looking at schools that have the facilities or the support staff capacity to do it? Like, one thing people who trot out these things, they have communications folks who handle media duties, right? Like, usually they're split between 3 different sports. You have your soccer in the fall, your winter sport, and then a spring sport. And how does that work? Like athletic, health, like athletic support in terms of health, right? Like I can't even think of the word off the top of my head.
Trainers and
Athletic
nutritionists
trainer,
and all
yes,
that
thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
like athletic trainers, like not even like nutrition, because who knows what these schools have, right? You need to have athletic trainers at these various events, and if that athletic trainer is also split between sports, how is that going to be handled? Well, then does the school have to hire more staff? And if you're saving money on one hand, then you're spending more on this side. How does that work? So
yeah, plenty of questions to parse through. And did we lose Travis there? Did we lose your microphone?
No. He's there. He just stopped talking.
I thought I saw his lips moving still. Excuse me. But so over 200 D1 programs, and you talked about the different tiers of like preparedness. What are their budgets? What are their support staffs like? What are their facilities like? But in this paper, it looks like it whittles down to the top of what this new era would look like. It looks like it would, according to the graphic in the white paper, there would be 2 regional tiers, and this would be the top of the heap. So according to these recommendations, there would be 18 teams at the highest level of college soccer, with the criteria you're just saying, maybe recent history with a balance of facilities and staffing. Would you be able to circle some programs that would be ready for this top tier right now?
I mean, I think that's another question in and of itself. Are you just taking all of the big schools and sweeping them in, right? Like the Big Ten schools, like UCLA hasn't been great of late. How do you handle that, right?
Yeah.
Are you gonna ignore? Like that's where again, it's not. Not that I'm trying to duck it out, right? But do you just run through like the Georgetown, Georgetown, Akron, historical powers in the Big East that don't, they have, a somewhat prominent athletic reputation. You could make the argument about Georgetown and its basketball program where it is nowadays, but soccer is probably their best sport in men's and women's, in terms of being nationally competitive. So, you have to consider the cases of something like that. And, Dan Helfrich was heavily involved, who is a Georgetown soccer alumni. He actually does the play-by-play announcing, that kind of a thing. How do you handle that? I think that, Big West soccer, UC Santa Barbara, UC Irvine, UC Davis, players have come through there and gone to, Max Arston played for one of the UCs. That's not Berkeley, right? I think it was David or Irvine.
I think it went to Davis. Yeah. I think it was Davis. Yeah.
Right. So and if you're putting that together, it makes plenty of sense for UCLA to be in a region with a lot of those schools, the San Diego States, right? Those are programs that they have pretty good coaches. They're doing a relatively good job. But then, are you clustering just UCLA with them, or does UCLA then go up and fly with the Oregon State, Washington, Portland? Obviously, is doing very well of late and has done a good job, but Gonzaga has not been as relevant with their men's D1 program. Seattle U's been pretty good. I know those are all schools where you can make a case that they should be involved because it makes sense when you're looking at it regionally, but are they the best program within that? But it makes sense to have them because Washington's there. So you'd want Washington to be playing Seattle, Gonzaga, Portland, Oregon State, if you're looking at it and pitching it as the cost savings angle of it. So how you have those conversations, I don't even know where you would start. I don't know how you would cut it off. Obviously, it makes sense to make it as big as possible, but I've talked to college coaches this year that are like, I guess I need to start figuring out games for 2026, but I don't know. So lots and lots of questions. It's very interesting, as I think you said, Jason, that they're pushing this forward, but what will actually become of it? Will, as Robert said, NCAA take it and just chuck it in the bin, or will the power conferences seize it and be like, look, we're going to break away from the NCAA, break free. We're going to try this soccer thing in 26. And then in 27, all our football and basketball will be our own thing, and we'll keep all the money from the NCAA. But how does that work within TV rights of the power? It's these things that are just like, I've tried to understand it, and I've tried to ask people about it, and they're just still like.
From what you're saying, it sounds like this is going to be obviously incredibly difficult to arrange in a coherent way, but 2026 seems like a very ambitious timeline.
Right. Why? No, that's why, like I said, my conversations with coaches trying to figure out what's going on, like they're like, I guess I need to actually just move forward like it's business as usual versus I need to be prepared to be involved in this. I don't even know what they're going to call it, to be honest with you. U.S. Soccer League, college soccer breakaway, and then are all 213 men's D1 programs doing it? What happens to the ones that don't? Are they still in the NCAA? Are they still in the NCAA tournament? Without the, there's that side to it as well. Like, because I've heard of instances where players basically are getting, tampered because college coaches at like a ACC school will be like, hey, you're not going to be in the Super League. So like at one point it was called a Super League. I heard that thrown around as well. I saw a different paper that nobody else saw. Right. So like similar ideas and whatnot, but it's like, there's all sorts of things chattering ongoing in the background that
it's very confusing. Yeah. Not a lot of clarity. Intriguing when they drop it, publicly and everybody kind of scrambles to understand what's going on here. But yeah.
I mean, I think the main takeaway is it's like, this is all what uses soccer analyzed with all these people, and this is the recommendations. And the NCAA, if you're still operating sort of within that umbrella structure, they can just take it or leave it. But I think that NCAA wouldn't even pay for a thing like that. So that's why it was interesting to see the U.S. Soccer Federation step up and at least, because it costs, I'm sure, a decent amount of money and some time that NCAA just didn't want to put into it.
Yeah, no doubt. Lots to chew on, lots to parse through. Interesting to see what all becomes a reality from these recommendations. Besides speculating on the unknown future of college soccer, what do you usually write on, and where can you tell our listeners and viewers to go to check out your stuff?
Yeah, we cover men's and women's D1 college soccer mainly over at Top Drawer Soccer, and then we track all the players coming through who are either looking to break through the pro ranks or make it to a college program, cover youth national teams as best we can, and basically tracking the players of the future in U.S. soccer and beyond. Mostly just U.S. soccer, though.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Clark, for joining us here on Morning Kickaround, and we'll definitely need some answers in the future to the myriad of questions regarding the future of college soccer. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Good to chat with you, Travis.
Yep. Good to see you, Jason. See ya.
All right. Thank you for tuning in today. And thank you and welcome to all the new subscribers to the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. If you want to support us a little bit more, become an MK Ultra for bonus features, unique and specific content for the members, as well as access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server, where there's a whole litany of great American soccer conversations going on there. The show is not over. One more segment in today's show. We're going to come right back with another installment. They're almost daily now. Soccer Under Construction here on Morning Kickaround. Put Des Moines, Iowa back on the map of a possible soccer-specific stadium. Des Moines Soccer Stadium plans have risen from the dead.
We're putting them on the map, or we're not putting? We're still waiting to put them on the map, Rob.
Put them in pencil.
Put them in pencil, so it can be erased later. I see. Okay, continue. My apologies.
Yeah, Des Moines Soccer Stadium plans have risen from the dead. The board overseeing the project there locally concedes that they probably won't be able to close the $23.1 million funding gap, which had stalled plans to this point. So the nonprofit Iowa Soccer Development Foundation has proposed a new 6,300 stadium there in Des Moines, Iowa.
We have a rendering. We love a good rendering. On the rendering rating scale, I am going to give this a 3.5. It is very basic. It looks like there's a 2-tiered stand over there, which you don't see a lot of those,
especially not in a small stadium.
No, that's an interesting one. Maybe we did see one recently in was it I was gonna say Reno. Did Reno have a 2-tiered stand? I'm not sure.
There's so many. Like I said, there's so many new stadium plans. I'm gonna have to categorize them and put a filing cabinet of them next to me.
This is all we got. This one look, so we don't know what that one end looks like that's behind the roof of this one stand. I do like the fact, obviously, that both these stands on the sidelines have roofs. Whether this is anything like the ultimate finished product, of course, your guess is as good as mine, and it's probably not going to happen exactly like this. But this is obviously, again, rising from the dead, so to speak, because we actually this is how dead the pro soccer in Iowa situation was. We actually saw a story about how it wasn't going anywhere. We thought about reaching out to some people. I even made contact with a couple of Iowa soccer people, just people who live in Iowa, care about soccer, write about soccer, on Blue Sky, intending to follow up with a story, but nothing happened. And we just kind of got lost in the sauce of other projects popping up. Soccer under construction has become, as you said, a regular segment because there are stadiums either under construction or better renderings or further down the road. And I lost the thread on Iowa, right? Because we talked about this Iowa project was backed by the same guy who owns Parma over in Italy. He is an Iowa scion of the come and go convenience store gas station dynasty. I guess. I think they changed their name, but that's what they were called when it was launched. He seemed to be more interested in his Italian team than in what was going on in Iowa. Again, you mentioned that funding gap, and now here we go. Look, I'm glad there's at least some appetite to move forward. If they can't find a way to get to the plan they really wanted, I'm not going to spend other people's money and say somebody should just close that gap on their own. I think you have a list of some of the people who have invested in this project in front of you, Robin. I don't know if anybody's got an extra couple of million lying around to finish this off or close the gap. If we want to have pro soccer in places like Des Moines, Iowa, we kind of have to take the good with the bad. We can't let perfect be the enemy of good, right?
No, we can't. Was that a question?
I'm waiting for you to respond and give us your thoughts about the Iowa Stadium situation here.
Well, I think that it's interesting that the president of this ISDF board threw some hedges into his statement here. And here, I'll say this is Jeff Lorenzen, president of the ISDF. We have some ground preparation the city has committed to helping to get the site ready. Once it's prepared, we think that we can get it done over the next years. We should be ready to break ground. There's a lot of shoulds and we mights in that.
So you're right.
That's why my hesitancy to put it in pen just yet. But it is interesting to see this somewhat resurrected from the dead. But so money that has kind of come in, the list of donors, which is included in the business record article here, which isn't always the case. So there is Kyle and Sharon Krause. Not sure if they're big philanthropists in the area or what, but they're giving in $23 million. Individual corporate gifts, $12.2 million.
Kyle Krause is the guy I'm talking about. Kyle Krause is the scion of the come and go dynasty. That's my understanding. I think that's where his money comes from, and he's the guy that owns Parma. He's the president of Parma.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. And then corporate gifts, $12.2 million. State of Iowa, $13 million from the Iowa Reinvestment Act. Prairie Meadows, $200K. City of Des Moines, $1.5 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. Polk County, $17 million. That's a lot of money from a county. And the state of Iowa, $5 million from Destination Iowa grant. So there's a mixed private and public funds going into this.
Okay, so 6,300 seats, obviously not huge. Something. Getting pro soccer off the ground in Iowa. We could talk about where they fit into the planned U.S. soccer hierarchy. And by the way, if you haven't gone back and watched the huge questions USL faces for Division I and Pro Rel, please go watch that video and comment on it and help spread the word. I put a map on the screen, and you can see that that pin there. It says Des Moines. What does it say? Des Moines something Southern Pond. I can't read it from this distance, but that's where the stadium is intended to go. Now you can kind of figure, if you don't know Des Moines, and I don't, you can bet that the big river there to the east, where it says Des Moines in bold letters, is probably the downtown area of Des Moines. So this is not downtown. It's sort of downtown adjacent and all that. It is a super fun site. You talked about in your quote there from the president of the ISDF or whatever, that there could and should and would. And that's partly because they're going to have to do a lot of environmental remediation on this site. If you don't know what a super fun site is, it basically means lots of really bad stuff in terms of the environment happened there, and they really have to clean it up before people should be allowed to occupy and be around those things.
And we saw Buffalo have their plans kind of have it to be rearranged due to some site history and some bad substances in the area. Some good input coming in from the chat here, saying that this at the very least is better than the baseball stadium situation, and something that has been overarching, just not only specific to Iowa, but this move for stadiums in general is Ewan put it in here. Best time to build was 6 years ago. Things are way too pricey here. I mean, everything's like double, triple. Supplies are expensive. Labor is expensive. The labor market is uncertain. How many of these stadiums that we've been talking about dotting the country might face just like the harsh realities of like building expense?
Yeah, I mean, like that. Look, you wouldn't have you wouldn't have as many announcements and as many big proclamations and people planning things as you do if there wasn't intent, right? If there wasn't at least some intent, you don't go public with your intentions to build a mixed use development and put a soccer stadium in it and start a soccer team unless you want to do those things. Now, as we've said, the cynical view, the view of the economics of all this is often soccer is just kind of a passenger, or it's really kind of the MacGuffin, if you will, that gets to
Love that.
the mixed use development thing, because what a lot of the people involved in these projects really want to do is get their hands on some land that for them, that's not the case in Des Moines, it seems, but get their hands on some land, particularly downtown, in an area that they feel like they can turn into a money-making enterprise. That's really what's going on here, right? So, yeah, and obviously this is true too from you, and the intent is to hope that public money saves these projects. They go public, they make this big thing. We want to revitalize this area of downtown or downtown adjacent or the rail yards or the dock or whatever. And then the city or the county are supposed to go, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then they go, well, we need tax breaks. So we need a lease for 1,000 years at $1 a year. Or we need a big subsidy from the state or the county or the city in order to make this happen. And then it comes down to that, the negotiations, the back and forth, how much money is coming from public funds to help what is ultimately a private enterprise, but of course can generate jobs or generate economic activity or be the legacy of an elected official, which is sometimes part of this.
To answer some questions of alarm in the chat about the TCE, about this being a toxic contamination environment, in this press release, or actually this article in the Business Record, the city of Des Moines has committed up to $13 million to assist with the environmental remediation of the site.
Can we also say, apparently, and I'll eat crow here, and this is worth pointing out, this may be moving forward, but it is October, and as someone said in the chat there, that nothing has changed. A local newsletter picked up an article from June and reported it as news. So what we've got here is a story with a lot of the details we're passing along that is from June 25th of this year. So we, again, is this revived? If they've chosen perhaps to move forward on some level, and we are now in that sort of dead news period where they've got some other details that they've got to work out. They've agreed to move forward despite the budget shortfall, et cetera, is that what's going on here? Or did we just mistake old news for new news, which is possible?
Yeah, that would be unfortunate, but we'll see if the stadium plans in Des Moines, Iowa push forward. I know there's a definite diehard section of Des Moines Menace fans, and I'm sure they would love to see their club progress. So hopefully that this isn't a stalled out thing and just old news, and there is progress ahead, and 2026 is a realistic date for them to break ground there. So I think that brings us to the conclusion of Wednesday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Thank you to all the awesome comments in the mix. Welcome to all the new subscribers and new members that we've welcomed this week.
Maybe by talking, I'm just sorry, I'm still stuck on this. Maybe by talking about Iowa, this show can be part of the push to get this thing really moving forward so they can finally put an end to this will they or won't they situation.
Soccer fans and fans in Iowa, email this or send the link of this to your
we talked about you.
Leader.
We talked about you 4 months after whatever went down. So yeah, that's what's going on.
Put the pressure on. We're putting the pressure on here. Public influence campaigning here on Morning Kickaround. But thank you to all the live viewers. Thanks for everyone getting in the comments. $3.99 is all it takes to become a MK Ultra 8 channel member. You get bonus content, early access to videos, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server. And then thank you to all our new subscribers. Doesn't cost you a darn thing, and welcome aboard. If Jason doesn't have anything else to add, I'd say, do you have a off the cuff half-baked prediction for our wild card winners in the MLS tonight?
I don't. Well, I think I would probably. Man, that's a good question.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, MLS
I would
Cup
say
playoffs are always that's a fool's errand to pick a winner. I mean, last year, not that I would have expected Montreal to win necessarily, but I do think it was a mild upset that Atlanta went up there and won, and then obviously went on to beat Inter Miami in the first round proper, so to speak. Orlando seems to have fallen flat. I kind of like Chicago. They seem to have some momentum. And I guess I'll take RSL, despite the fact that Portland's got that game at home. It's hard to believe in Portland. And so I'll go with Diego Luna and RSL.
I would say I begrudgingly agree with you there. I think that Chicago can get it done at their second home in Bridgeview. I'd actually like to hear from Fire fans. Like, how do you feel about going to Bridgeview instead of going
Will that place be
Soldier
full? Will that place be full tonight? Will there be 20,000 on hand in Bridgeview to watch the Fire play Orlando in a do or die knockout playoff game? That's a big question about the health of the Chicago Fire in that town right now.
And then out west, coin flip. I really honestly think between RSL and Portland Timbers, really couldn't tell, but I'd like to see more Diego Luna, so I'll put my money on the road team out west. But we will be back on Friday. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. And until then, everybody, enjoy your soccer.